From devout Methodist to axe murderer to certified counselor, this is the story of Candy Montgomery, the woman who axed her friend 41 times and was found not guilty. And if that already sounds messy to you, stick around because it gets even messier. The gruesome murder of Betty Gore. On the evening of June 13th, 1980, a worried Alan Gore asked his neighbors to check in on his wife. He had traveled for a business trip and couldn't reach her. Alan called several times, and the more he called, the more worried he got. Betty was home alone with their 1-year-old daughter, Bethany, which only added to Alan's concerns. Before calling the neighbors, Alan called Betty's friend and his ex-lover, Candy Montgomery, to see if she knew where Betty was. Candy told Alan that she had been by their house earlier and everything was in order. She told him that she went over to pick up a swimsuit for their oldest daughter, Elisa, who she later spent the day with. After speaking to Candy, Alan sent his neighbors over to check on his wife. The first thing his neighbors noticed was Betty and Alan's 1-year-old daughter crying her eyes out in another room. As one neighbor took her out of the house, the other stayed back to find Betty. This neighbor was Lester Gaylor. After searching the house, Lester found Betty's mutilated body in the utility closet. He described the sight as the worst thing he had ever seen. Betty's entire body was covered with axe wounds. It was later revealed that Candy had struck Betty a total of 41 times, with 28 of those being on her head. According to reports from Texas Monthly, Betty was still alive for the majority of the blows. It was so bad that the detectives said it looked like something out of a horror movie. The police also found blood and hair in the shower of the Gore house, indicating that Candy had cleaned herself at the scene of the crime before leaving. After killing Betty, Candy went to church to pick up her children and Betty's oldest daughter, Elisa. She took them to see a Star Wars movie and then brought Elisa home with her. According to Lester, he had seen Candy the day after the murder and she seemed completely unbothered. The early life of Candy Montgomery. Candy Montgomery's story began on November 15th, 1949. She was born with the name Candace Wheeler. As a child, Candy moved around a lot due to her family's busy work schedule. When Candy was 4, she lost a competition with another child. She became so upset that she smashed a glass jar, which injured her in the process. She started crying, and in response, her mother shushed her. Candy's defense team would later claim that it was this traumatic experience that led her to violently murdering her best friend. Candy's marriage to Pat Montgomery. Candy met Pat Montgomery at work. Pat worked with Texas Instruments as an electrical engineer while Candy worked as a secretary. In the 1970s, Candy and Pat got married and had 2 children, a boy and a girl. The family moved to Wiley, Texas in 1977. Her friendship with Betty Gore. After Candy and her husband moved to Wiley, they became regular members of the First United Methodist Church of Lucas. It was at this church that Candy met Betty Gore, a school teacher. Candy and Betty were singers in the church choir, and their daughters were roughly the same age. Over time, Candy's daughter and Betty's daughter became best friends, and this only brought their mothers closer. The 2 families became inseparable, with the children often spending the night at each other's houses. In fact, on the night of Betty Gore's murder, her daughter Elisa slept over at the Montgomery house. Candy's affair with Alan Gore. Candy's infatuation with her best friend's husband began after a sweaty day of volleyball. In October 1978, Candy met Alan during a church volleyball game. They had bumped into each other during the game, and she developed a strong infatuation towards him. After the game, Candy met up with Alan to tell him she wanted to start an affair with him. Flattered by her approach, Alan agreed to the affair. He had never received so much attention, and Candy wanted a little more excitement in her life. The pair had strict rules for their secret relationship, including no emotional attachments, only meeting on weekends, splitting expenses, and ending the affair immediately if things ever became too risky. Candy was so meticulous about her affair with Alan that she created a pros and cons list before starting an affair with him. The affair between Candy Montgomery and Alan Gore lasted for almost a year. About a year and a half after the affair began, Betty Gore was found dead. The end of their affair. Betty and Alan's marriage was falling apart, so to strengthen it, they attended a marriage encounter weekend program. The program secluded couples from outside distractions like television or radio, forcing them to have real, meaningful conversations. During their time there, Alan and Betty bared their souls to one another. And after hashing it out in front of a counselor, they decided to actively work on their marriage. This led Alan to end his affair with Candy. She wasn't particularly heartbroken about his decision because the excitement that had led her to him in the first place had slowly dwindled in the 11 months they were together. The affair came to an end shortly after Betty gave birth to her second child. Not long after, she was murdered. The murder trial. During the trial against Candy Montgomery, her defense team claimed that she acted in self-defense. According to Candy, she had gone to see Betty to pick up a swimsuit for Betty's daughter, Elisa. While she was there, Betty accused her of sleeping with her husband. Candy admitted to it and apologized, but this only upset Betty more. She stepped out of the living room and came back with an axe in her hand. Betty allegedly shoved Candy into the utility closet, where she then lifted the axe and tried to kill her. They started wrestling for the axe, but Candy managed to get a hold of it. She struck Betty over the head with it and tried to escape, but Betty blocked the exit. The two women wrestled for the axe again, and again Candy was victorious. She struck Betty with the 3-foot-long axe 41 times while Betty's daughter slept in the other room. After the murder, she took a bath in Betty's house and left the scene. Candy became the #1 suspect in the murder after Alan told the police about their affair. The police arrested her 2 weeks after the murder. To support Candy's self-defense theory, her lawyers hired a psychiatrist to evaluate her. The psychiatrist placed Candy under hypnosis to extract her version of the event. The sessions were so extreme that someone from the waiting room remembered hearing several screams. After the evaluation, the psychiatrist, Dr. Fred Faison, stated that Candy had entered into a vaguely conscious state of rage. This state is known as a dissociative reaction. According to Dr. Fred, the reaction was brought on by Betty shushing Candy like her mom did all those years ago. During their tussle for the axe, Betty had supposedly raised her finger to her mouth and shushed Candy. This one act affected Candy so much that she snatched the axe and struck her friend with it 41 times. Candy was horrified when the axe she used to murder her former friend was presented in court. She allegedly pleaded with the court that she not be forced to see it. The jury took less than 4 hours to decide Candy's fate. And although there were times when her hypnosis account contradicted her original statement, Candy was found not guilty. She allegedly showed no emotions as the judge read her verdict. Before Candy's confession, she received support from her friends and church members. On one occasion, Candy's friend stated that she didn't have it in her to commit such a crime. However, after Candy's not guilty verdict, she received several death threats. Candy's life after the trial. After the trial, Candy, Pat, and their 2 kids moved to Georgia. Not long after the move, the couple got divorced. Candy also went back to using her maiden name, Wheeler, and after a few years, she became a certified counselor. Candy, who now goes by Candace, and her daughter, Jenny, have worked together to help people who struggle with depression. She has refused all attempts by the media to have a conversation with her. As for Alan Gore, he lost custody of his daughters to Betty's parents. After the trial, he remarried but later divorced. Candy's story has been retold twice so far. First, in the 1990 movie A Killing in a Small Town, and again in the 2022 Hulu film series Candy, starring Jessica Biel. And it will be retold again in the upcoming HBO Max miniseries Love and Death, starring Elizabeth Olsen. There are many strange things surrounding the murder of Betty Gore. But perhaps the strangest thing about the case was that the murder occurred on Friday the 13th.